Hi, my name is Hugo Cuevas-Mohr. And before we begin, I want to tell you three things. First, I'm a migrant in the United States. Second, I am a soccer fan. I was a goalie in my youth. Third, I've been in the money transfers and remittances industry for more than half of my life. And here is my book, Sending Money, which is the history of money transfers since they began till about 2010. I have called this video the World Cup of Diasporas, closing the border and cheering the goal. Now, the 2026 FIFA World Cup, hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, shows us something that many politicians still refuse to admit. National identity is no longer contained inside national borders. Soccer, or I prefer to say football, of course, has become one of the clearest public stages where migration, ancestry, citizenship, colonial identity, labor mobility, and political contradiction all collide. And the irony is evident. Politicians campaigning on border control, but the emotional symbols of the nation, its athletes, its victories, its flags, are increasingly produced by migration. A Moroccan fan celebrates Hakimi. A Curacao supporter cheers a team that is mostly born abroad. A United States fan celebrates Balogun, born in New York, raised in England, with Nigerian roots. A white nationalist might hate that story, but the country still cheers when he scores. A French fan celebrates a team shaped by African, Caribbean, and European migration stories. And some of those fans that are cheering will probably vote for Marine Le Pen and her party. Yes, at the same time, many of these same countries are debating deportations, walls, asylum restrictions, and national identity. Think about it. In 2026, the World Cup is not just being played by nations, it is being played by migration routes. I can flood you with a lot of data. There are 48 teams and 1,248 players. And nearly 1 of 4 players is foreign-born. Around 23-25%. It's a historic high. Now let's look at countries where migrants and diasporas come from. Curacao, I named it. 96% of the team is foreign-born. This is a diaspora team infrastructure resulting from Dutch Caribbean ties. DR Congo, 85% foreign-born, drawing from the Congolese diaspora in Belgium, in France, and other countries. Morocco, 73% foreign-born, a major football superpower shaped by diaspora and ready to co-host the 2030 World Cup. The North African countries, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, are benefiting from their diasporas in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Spain. 8 squads have a majority of foreign-born players from the total of their team. And that is not a coincidence. It has become structural. But foreign-born is only part of the story. Now let's look at FIFA and its legal architecture of belonging so you understand a little bit more of what's going on. Eligibility through parents and grandparents has existed in various forms for decades. But what has changed is that FIFA modernized and clarified eligibility and change of association rules. And this is from the pressure of migration. FIFA now has a change of association platform listing players who received favorable decisions to change their sporting nationality. Football has created a legal category that politics often resist. which is layered belonging. A player can be born in France, raised in Belgium, have Moroccan grandparents, play club football in Spain, and represent Morocco. That is not really confusion. That is the modern world. That is what migration has accomplished. And this is where Morocco, Curacao, DR Congo, Ghana, Senegal, Algeria, Tunisia, Haiti, Bosnia-Herzegovina have benefited. Diaspora has created football pipelines. Migration is not only moving workers, it is moving dreams, bodies, imaginations, languages, tactics, and childhoods. But let's flip the lens and look at the receiving country contradiction. France, Belgium, England, Switzerland, the United States, Canada, they benefit twice. And most people in these countries do not realize it. First, they receive migrant labor, who pay taxes, they're entrepreneurs, they receive innovation, ambition, education, and demographic renewal. Second, they receive athletic talent. Children of migrants become national icons. But politically, those same societies often struggle to accept migrants as fully belonging until they score with medals, carry the flag, sing the national anthem. In some countries, including the United States, the political debate has moved toward changing citizenship rules, restricting temporary protections, and making it harder for migrants to become permanent members of society. Migrants are questioned at the border, questioned in the workplace, questioned in the streets, harassed, restricted from political participation, but embraced in the stadium when they become useful to the national hymn. But there is also a contradiction between public sentiment and politics. In the United States, Gallup, a polling firm, gives us these numbers. In 2025, 79% of Americans said that immigration is good for the country. And this is a record high. At the same time, the share of Americans who wanted immigration to decrease, falling from 55% in 2024 to 30% in 2025. Support for deporting all documented immigrants also fell, from 47% to 38%. That's why politicians change the rhetoric, saying we're going to deport only criminals. Have this happened? You know that is not the case. That makes the irony much more complex. Public sentiment is not simply anti-immigrant. People may want border control, but may also recognize immigration's value. So the argument should not be everyone is anti-immigrant. The real argument is this: political and electoral posturing is often harsher than public sentiment. And national sports reveal the gap between what governments say about migrants and what countries depend on migrants to do. The deeper question is, who owns the nation? Because the World Cup forces us to ask ourselves, is nationality birth, bloodline, passport, language, memory, assimilation, a legal document, or singing with pride a national anthem before the kickoff of a soccer match? And the answer might be all of the above. Very few national teams are museums of purity. They are mostly living expressions of society now, showing us how mixed and intertwined we really are. This deeply concerns me. And it also speaks to my own life. I was born in Guatemala to a Colombian father and a French mother. My mother left France during the war and lost her European citizenship, and later met my father while they were students in Canada. I have lived in Guatemala, Colombia, Belgium, and established myself in the United States in 1992. And I have spent my life both as a remittance consultant and as a writer. So when I look at the World Cup, I do not only see football, I see migration, I see family histories, I see money moving across borders, I see the private sacrifices behind the public celebrations. And let's look closely at France. France has 21 players out of 26 with a migrant background. 3 of them are foreign born. Michael Olise, Marcus Thuram, and Bryce Samba. At the same time, around $20 billion in personal remittances are sent every year from France to families abroad. And approximately 1/4 of France's population has a migrant background. Think about that. Canada follows very close, with 20 players having migrant background, 7 of them foreign born. Canada sends around $15 billion every year in national remittances to many countries around the world from where those migrants come from. And Canada might be the cleanest modern migration nation case. Immigration policy, refugee settlement, multicultural urban life, and global family networks are all visible in the national team. Approximately 44% of Canada's population has a migrant background. Of course, and there is the United States. The US has 13 players with migrant background, about 50% of the team, and 6 foreign-born players in its 2026 squad. Berhalter, Reina, Dest, Robinson, Tillman, and Sendejas. This is the perfect paradox of the nation of immigrants, one of the most migration-shaped societies in the world, and is one of the places where the loudest political battles over borders, asylum, deportation, white nationalism, religion, and national identity are being fought. Approximately 30% of the US population has a migrant background when we include both immigrants and US-born children of immigrants. And Latinos are central to the story. There are about 68 million Latinos in the United States. We're about 68 million Latinos in the United States, the second largest Latino population in the world after Mexico, larger than the population in many Latin American countries and Spain itself. Even with deportations, ICE raids, fear, and the pressure for people to self-deport, the country continues to be transformed by Latino labor, culture, language, and family networks. More than $100 billion in personal remittances are sent every year from the United States, the largest total in the world. So here is the whole contradiction. The migrant is told to leave, but his labor is needed. The migrant is told that he doesn't belong, but his child is asked to sing the national anthem. The migrant is treated as a threat, but his remittance sustains families across borders. The migrant is questioned at the border, but celebrated when he scores. That's why this World Cup matters more than you think. Because the 2026 World Cup may be remembered for his goals, his stars, Messi and Neymar and the ones that are gone now, and it's stadiums full of people cheering, the Norwegians rowing. But it's also telling us something much deeper. Nations are changing. Migrations are not outside the national story. Migration is inside every jersey. Migration is also inside the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see? À los enfants de la patrie. Inside every celebration, every goal, every score. Inside all the money transfers that are sent by migrants to their family. Altruism in the best way that humans can envision. And perhaps the real question is not why migrants are representing nations where they do not belong or where they belong. The real question is why nations still pretend that they were built without them, erasing them from history. The real question is not why migrants are representing nations, but why nations still pretend they were built without them. This is why the World Cup of Diasporas matters. It allows us to see what is usually hidden. The player is visible, the remittance sender is invisible. The goal is visible, the sacrifice is invisible. The anthem is visible. The accent at home is invisible, or tries to be. The jersey is visible. The money transfer is invisible. But they are part of the same story, because migration does not only produce workers, it produces citizens, athletes, artists, writers, entrepreneurs. It produces new languages, new neighborhoods, new foods, new music, new dreams, and yes, it produces national teams. So the next time we hear politicians say that migrants are a threat, ask yourself, is a threat to what? To the economy? Then why do so many economies depend on them? To national culture? Then why is national culture constantly renewed by them? To national identity? Then why are national teams increasingly carried by their children? The contradiction is not migration. The contradiction is in the politics that denies what the country already is. Because countries are not pure. They never were. Since the start of human migration in Africa 200,000 years ago, we've been migrating. It's part of the human species, Homo sapiens. And migration makes wars, marriages, exiles, labor contracts, colonial histories, refugee journeys, student visas, family reunifications, love stories, and children, like mine, born between languages. So the World Cup may be remembered by the stadiums, the stars, its goals, and the final, whoever gets there. But it should remember by something a little bit more deeper than that. Is the World Cup where migration stopped being in the background. It became the story because it showed us that nations are changing and migrations are not outside the national story of every country. Thank you for watching, following, subscribing, and most of all, sharing. Thanks.